I watched a woman dismantle her cheating husband's life with the calm precision of a surgeon. And it all started with a bizarre request to book a hotel room for just a couple of hours. This happened pre-pandemic, back when the world felt a little more normal. I'd only been working as a front desk agent for about a week. It was my first hotel job, and though I'd been a check-in agent for a cruise line before, I was still getting my sea legs, so to speak. The afternoon shift had been quiet, a few check-ins, the usual hum of a weekday. Around 7 p.m., a woman I'll call Isabel walked in. After a brief, quiet conversation with the valet, she approached my desk. We exchanged greetings, and then she made her strange request. She wanted to reserve a room, but only for a couple of hours. I explained politely that we weren't that kind of establishment, and the minimum booking was for a full night. I quoted her the price, a steep $240, which was frankly overpriced for our hotel, but she didn't even blink. She just agreed and presented her credit card. The weirdness started when I asked for her ID to put on the reservation. Isabel pulled back slightly. She said she didn't want her name anywhere on the booking. Instead, she wanted it under the name of the man who would be joining her later. This revealed Isabel's greatest strength, her meticulous planning and emotional control, which ultimately turned her husband's deceit into the very instrument of his downfall. I paused, trying to process this. I confirmed she would also be using the room, and told her that protocol required me to at least list her as an accompanying guest. I tried to reassure her, explaining that the guest list was internal. Only employees would ever see it. Throughout this whole exchange, Isabel was the picture of composure, polite, kind, and incredibly understanding. But in my mind, a simple, slightly sleazy narrative was forming. She was married, meeting a guy for a one-night stand, and didn't want him finding out her real name. Honestly, why not just go to a motel? My theory seemed to be confirmed when she leaned in and asked me to add a note to the reservation. If any staff needed to address her in front of her male guest, we were to use a different name she provided. I was utterly bewildered by this point, but I was also new and trying my best to be accommodating, all while my brain was running in circles. She finalized the check-in, even showing me a picture of the man on her phone so I'd recognize him when he arrived. I handed her the key, and she went up to the room. About an hour later, the mystery man, let's call him Mark, strolled into the lobby. He walked in with the casual confidence of a man who thought he was getting away with something, completely unaware that his world was about to be turned upside down by the very woman he was betraying. Unfortunately, my coworker, who knew nothing about the situation, handled his check-in, so I didn't get a good look. Less than 30 minutes after Mark went upstairs, the elevator doors opened and Isabel walked out. She approached the desk, placed both room keys squarely in front of me, and said, "Thank you," with a tone that was both serious and deeply cordial. Then she turned and walked away. As she headed for the valet, my mind raced. That was impossibly fast, even for a quickie. And why did she have both keys? Where was Mark? A dark thought flickered. Please don't have murdered him. The security supervisor, who often hung around the front desk, was staring after her, and I could tell he was thinking the same thing. My coworker and I started whispering frantically. The woman who left did not look like someone who'd just had a pleasant romantic encounter. Just then, Mark came down the stairs, and we all breathed a collective sigh of relief. He wasn't dead, but before we could see what happened next, our night exploded. A wave of about 30 distressed airline passengers descended upon us, their flight cancelled, all needing rooms. I was thrown into the chaos and figured I'd never find out the end of the story. But then, a hero emerged. The valet guy, having finished his duties, came over to the desk, his eyes wide. He had the tea, and it was piping hot. He told us that when Isabel first arrived, she'd specifically asked him to park her car so the license plate was hidden. Why? Because Mark was her husband, and the fake name she had me put on the reservation? The alias we were supposed to call her by? Well, that just so happened to be the name of the woman Mark was cheating on her with. This absolute genius of a woman had somehow convinced her cheating husband that his mistress had booked them a romantic night at our hotel. He walked into that room expecting his girlfriend, only to find his wife sitting calmly on the bed, waiting for him. And in that moment, the true genius of her plan became clear. She hadn't just caught him, she had orchestrated a moment of poetic justice so perfect, it was almost theatrical. She came back downstairs after delivering what I can only imagine was a soul-crushing verbal takedown. Without a single hair out of place, she had the valet bring both of their cars around, Then she waited patiently in the lobby until Mark trudged down. She simply extended her hand and demanded their house keys. He handed them over. She got in her car and just drove away, leaving him stranded. As one commenter on the story later noted, it was a great, non-violent revenge on a cheating spouse, and you have to hope she didn't let him come home later. I like to think the mistress had a role to play in the setup. How else could Isabel have tricked him so perfectly? It's easy to imagine the conversation. As another person suggested, what do you mean? His wife? Yep, we're married. Want revenge? Hell, yes. That woman is everything I aspire to be. In the end, this story is a powerful reminder that the best revenge isn't always loud or destructive. Sometimes, it's meticulous, cold, and executed with a brilliance that leaves the other person with nothing but the consequences of their own actions. What do you think is the most ingenious part of her plan? And what do you think happened to Mark after his wife drove away?